Hello, my name is Father Jacob Rouse, and I am the pastor of Notre Dame Parish in Cresco, Iowa. And welcome to episode 7 of the Eucharistic Revival podcast.
Because that's the name we're going with.
That other beautiful voice you're hearing is Father Kevin Earlywine, my co-host. Father Kevin, can you introduce yourself?
Yes, I am Father Kevin Earlywine, pastor of St. Patrick's in Hampton and St. Mary's in Ackley. And here we are, and we have a special guest with us, Father Jacob, who you know and brought on. So,
Yes, our guest this week, this month, this period, this episode is Dr. Jason Reed. And he is wild about philosophy and Thomas Aquinas and everything that goes with that. And so I'd like you to introduce yourself and where do you teach right now?
So right now I am associate professor of philosophy at Divine Word College, which is run by the Society of Divine Word, about 20 minutes west of Dubuque. And Father Rouse actually we met at St. Patrick's in Cedar Rapids.
Yes, that's where we
met. Yeah, that's right. So we've known each other for long. So I'm excited to come talk to you about this stuff. So that's what I'm doing now. And I was this might come up later, but I was a seminary professor at a Protestant school for about 6 or 7 years. And now I've been at Divine Word for 7. So.
Okay.
And I also teach in the Archdiocese, in the permanent diaconate program for the Archdiocese of Dubuque, which I love. So I teach them philosophy, theology. Yeah.
The deacon candidates are a little shaken when they come out of your class, but it's very, very good for them.
I've heard rumors.
You are educating the clergy. We love it.
Yes.
Yeah, you mentioned you were a professor at a non-Catholic seminary, a Protestant seminary. Where was that at?
That was in Charlotte, North Carolina.
And what denomination?
Well, it was non-denominational, but it was Baptist in its theology, dispensational in its eschatology. So pretty straightforward Baptist, fundamentalist.
And what were you?
Exactly. Good question. So it's interesting how you find out what you were when you join the church, because the church wants to find out when you're baptized. I did not know I was baptized as an infant until I decided to join the church. So baptized Lutheran, raised and confirmed Methodist, and then when I went to college and had a religious experience, I got involved with the Baptists. So I was Baptist for about 20 years.
But you knew the Lord this whole time, though.
I would think so. Yes, okay. I think so.
You were teaching philosophy at this seminary, correct?
That's right. And what's interesting about this seminary, even though it's Baptist, we read Thomas Aquinas.
Wow.
So the main professor, some of your listeners might know who this is, Dr. Norman Geisler was the main teacher at Divine Word. Actually, I'm sorry, at Seminary Evangelical. And I have his book over here to my left, Thomas Aquinas, An Evangelical Appraisal. So it was an evangelical who introduced me to Thomas Aquinas.
I see.
So it's heavy emphasis on classical apologetics, classical theism, right? The proofs for the existence of God, evidence for the resurrection, and the divine attributes in Thomas. Geisler was famous for saying most people's God is an angel, not the one who exists, not pure being. So Dr. Geisler was the head guy there. So when I went to study under him, then he said, after I was there for a while, he said, you need to go get a PhD in philosophy. So I went from there to a place called St. Louis University, which I did not know was Jesuit.
Catholics, yeah.
Very Catholic. So show up on campus. Here I am, this evangelical, and I'm surrounded by these priests and collars and this massive church and other Catholics. So that was my first taste of the Catholic philosophical world.
Can I ask before that, what had been your experience of Catholicism or Catholics, or like, did you have any kind of preconceived notions about Catholics before you landed at St. Louis University?
I did. So what I knew about Catholics growing up was there was a Catholic church by the highway, and some of my friends went there. But the hometown I was in was primarily Presbyterian and Methodist. And I remember the Catholic families were bigger.
Mm-hmm.
So they had the big families with the Catholic kids, and I remember them having fish. At the school, the elementary school, the Catholic kids had their own line where they would get fish. And I didn't quite understand why they're eating fish.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I knew growing up. And then in college, when you become an evangelical in college, these, like the Salt Company was what I was a part of, or the Campus Crusade. I don't know if that's still around, but a lot of these evangelical campus groups, lots of former Catholics who'd walked away. So most of my interaction prior to St. Louis were Catholics who had left the church.
Mm-hmm.
So that I saw the church kind of through their eyes,
Mm-hmm.
right? The church doesn't talk about salvation, doesn't talk about faith in Jesus. It doesn't really talk about God. It was more just rules. And that was my picture
Mm-hmm.
of the church.
Mm-hmm.
But I was always very respectful of Thomas. And so I love Thomas Aquinas so much, but at the time he was a real enigma to me,
Mm-hmm.
because how can he be this great and be Catholic? And so I had said, well, there was nothing else to be in the 13th century.
Mm-hmm.
So I used to say that. But then Dr. Geyser assigned Garrigou Lagrange, who was a famous 20th century Dominican priest, who was JP2's dissertation director.
Mm-hmm.
Etienne Gilson, Jacques Maritain, all these great Thomists, and they were all Catholics. And I remember the day, I remember getting, back in the day, this is before Amazon, so you got books on ABE books.
Mm-hmm.
I remember Garrigou Lagrange's book coming in the mail, and I opened it up, and it was devoted to Mary. And my head just, like, how can you have this deep, and the title of the book was On God's Existence and Nature, this 2-volume, it's like 1,200 pages total, or about 1,000. And I'm like, this is just this dense, super dense philosophy, but it's devoted to Mary. So it's just, I was very confused. And then going to St. Louis, I got more confused.
Mm-hmm.
Because at St. Louis, I ran into like faithful Catholics. That was the first time I was in the Catholic world.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm around these really sharp philosophers, and they were serious about their faith. That really shocked me.
Mm-hmm.
That as serious as they were about philosophy, they were just as serious about their relationship with God.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
So you got not only were exposed to their knowledge and intelligence, and also their devotion and act.
They're serious.
Mm-hmm.
That's the one thing about Catholic intellectuals that I have always appreciated, is that they take their faith very seriously.
Mm-hmm.
When I go to professional philosophy conferences where there are lots of Catholics, and we'll have, like a morning mass, they all show up,
Mm-hmm.
and when they sing loud.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
They really are in love. So that was extremely refreshing. So not only were they very good philosophers in their minds and their devotions, but you could see how their philosophy was like part of their life.
Mm-hmm.
Right? It was integrated into their life in a way that as an evangelical it wasn't.
Mm-hmm.
An evangelical philosophy is integrated insofar as you can use it to defend the faith, do apologetics, respond to objections, but it really wasn't part of like a formative aspect to one's soul becoming something, and they had that.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Did you have a sort of a moment or a series of moments that here you are learning in this Catholic world, and then was there a change in your heart or mind that opened you up to belonging to the Catholic Church?
Well, my time at St. Louis, the biggest change for me was I really fell in love with my Catholic friends.
Mm-hmm.
But I wasn't interested in being Catholic.
Mm-hmm.
I never really thought about becoming Catholic, but I really respected them. What I wanted to do is I wanted to take all that great Catholicism and change the evangelicals.
Mm-hmm.
Huh.
That's what I wanted to do, because I wasn't interested in being Catholic.
Mm-hmm.
I respected them, but I wasn't even close to being there. It wasn't until I went back to the seminary and started teaching that things started to change. So when I was at this, the seminary I was at asked me to come back and teach. And then when I was teaching philosophy there, I started coming to Catholic conclusions. For example, I'm teaching systematic theology, which is called 502, which is theology proper. And we're going over Christology. Now, in logic, you have premises and you have a conclusion. And the thing about logic and arguments is that the conclusion either follows or it doesn't. It's either follows or it doesn't. So the first premise was Jesus is God. And I'm just teaching what I think is standard Christology. So the first premise was Jesus is God. We're talking about his humanity and his divinity. The second premise is Mary is the mother of Jesus. And there's tons of scripture for that. I said, well, then it just follows that Mary is the mother of God. That just follows those premises. I didn't think much of it until the dean in the back raised his hand. It was one of those classes where the dean comes and observes you when you're teaching as a young professor. And he said, so are you saying she's Theotokos? She is the mother of God? And so I said, so I explained it to him, right, although I understood. I'm not saying that Mary is responsible for Jesus' divinity. So it's not, I don't mean mother of God in that way. Not that here's Mary, then she gets pregnant and God comes forth. I don't think that. But the second person of the Trinity is in her womb, and she is responsible for his body. I mean, she is a mother. She plays the exact same role that my mother played for me. And then he said, I guess the Catholics are right. I'm like, I didn't know what that meant. Okay. So that started the whole, that was one just brief window. And it was just a series of one moment of, and just slowly over time, as I dive, the more serious I got about philosophy, the more serious I got about doing theology. And the more serious I got about doing theology, I was having a very difficult time being evangelical. Because as an instructor, you want to find a good textbook. I could not find a decent evangelical textbook on God's existence and nature. I just could not find one. I mean, there were some and they were okay, but they weren't systematic. I didn't realize how Thomistic I was. It wasn't systematic. There wasn't a necessary an order to it. Sometimes they'd start with the Trinity. Sometimes they'd start with God's existence. I didn't find anything that was suited my goals for the class. And I talked to the dean. I said, well, since we teach Thomas, I'll just teach the Summa. And so the book that you had in your hand before we started the recording, that was the textbook. To a bunch of evangelicals reading St. Thomas Aquinas and his arguments and the proofs. Now, why is that a problem? Because he's Catholic. And so if he's really good at philosophy, then why don't we consider his theology? I never got a good answer to that question. So after a few years there, just before I met Father Rouse, we decided we need to move back to Iowa and be near our families. So it was nothing about the school per se. It wasn't like we were unhappy there. It wasn't I'm going to become Catholic and move. Lisa our oldest had just turned 11, and I was at a soccer game, and it just dawned on me, my parents are never going to know their own grandkids. So we moved back for family reasons. And I continued to adjunct a little bit. But it's when we moved back and went to starting to go to St. Patrick's, after a few years there, I finally came to terms with the Catholic faith. Again, another argument. So in John chapter 6, Jesus gives an argument, right? He says, the flesh, the bread that comes down from heaven, you're supposed to eat and you will live. And the bread that came down from heaven is my flesh that I give for the world. So he's saying, premise one, eating this bread is how you have life. The second premise is this bread that you eat is my flesh. Conclusion, that Christ's flesh, you eat it for life. And that's exactly what the Jews ask him. The Jews ask him the question that's logically implied in what Jesus taught.
Mm-hmm.
Jesus's answer. So when you do logic, right, you either deny a premise, like, because just previous to that, he's talking to the Sadducees. And the Sadducees give an argument against the resurrection. And Jesus says you get a false premise.
Mm-hmm.
Right? You believe that there's marriage in the resurrection. Well, that's a false premise. So he corrects the premise. Okay, that's a false assumption. In these next lines, he doesn't correct a premise. He doesn't say no, because the word "eat" in the argument, right? Eat flesh, eat the bread, and eat the flesh means eating with your mouth. Chewing on it. That's what he's teaching.
Mm-hmm.
So when he responds, he doesn't say no. I don't mean eat the way you do. He repeats the conclusion.
Mm-hmm.
He repeats their inference.
Mm-hmm.
My flesh is food indeed. My blood is drink indeed. Unless you eat, unless you drink, unless you eat, unless you drink.
Yeah, he doubles down on it. He doubles down on it. Yeah.
Yeah, but that's how logic works. And when you study philosophy, you know how Jesus is very logical, so that's what's going on. So again, you don't have to be aware of logic, but it's working.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's the same thing when he talks about, asks about the Messiah, whose son is he? Who's the Messiah? Well, he's David's son.
Mm.
Well, if the Messiah is David's son, then why does David call him his Lord? Because what follows logically is that David is saying that his son is his God.
Oh, wow.
That's what follows logically.
Mm-hmm.
David's son is David's Lord.
Yeah.
How can his son, who's a human, be his God? Well, the answer's standing right in front of him. It's me.
That's cool. That passage has always confused me. Yeah.
So that's what's going on there. So again, you see how philosophy does lead to really good theology. You start to pick out these sort of implications. So I was reading this, and so what happens when you teach logic or you study logic? Well, and I can't run away from it.
Mm. It was a hound of heaven, wasn't it?
It was pretty awful. Because when you're evangelical, to think about becoming Catholic, in a sense, you do feel like you are losing your soul. So what I tell people is I actually know what it feels like phenomenologically to convert.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
I know what it means to convert.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. It's not fun.
So backing up a little bit, what led you guys to go to St. Patrick's in the first place? You moved to Iowa.
So my wife was raised Catholic and she reverted.
What's her name?
Our church in North Carolina split.
Mm-hmm.
And the first two churches we went after that were splitting that day. And I'm not exaggerating, Father. We went from one church splitting. The next weekend when we visited another church, it was splitting that day.
Oh, wow.
They had just fired the pastor and they started split. And then the next church we went to, they were splitting that day. I mean, you can't make this stuff up.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So at that time, I'm not sure exactly when, but my in-laws had come down and visited, and they're Catholic. So we went to Mass with them. And after that Mass, I think this is the right order. My wife can correct me. But then so she said, I'm going back to the Catholic Church.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I started going with her because I didn't have to see I knew there weren't going to be evangelicals there.
Mm-hmm.
So I could just go and sit and not have to worry about church politics.
Mm-hmm.
So when we came back to Iowa, now to answer your question, she had already said, we're going to go to the Catholic Church. I said, okay, I want the least evangelical Catholic church in town.
Mm-hmm.
And she gave me two options. She said, there's Immaculate Conception and St. Patrick's.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I said, which is closer? She said St. Patrick's. And that was,
mm-hmm.
I walked in that building. That was it. Like, I'll go, at least I can go here.
Mm-hmm.
And that would have been about 2011. And I joined the church a year after that.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, wow. And I probably met you in 13 or 14, probably. Wow.
Mm-hmm.
You were fresh.
That was fresh.
Wow.
Wow.
What was your wife's name? What is your wife's name?
Holly.
And then your daughter, you said Lisa was your oldest?
Lisa, Genevieve, Mary, and John. John was to make sure. I always forget to mention him. So John, you're mentioned.
Yes, John, if you're
You're
listening.
mentioned. John, if you're listening, you're mentioned.
He loves you.
So philosophy saved my life in two ways.
Wow.
The first time it saved my life, because I imagine you want to talk a little bit more about philosophy in the church, that sort of. So how did philosophy save me? When I was, and I'm sure this is true for so many people. I know it's true for a lot of people. You graduate high school, and then what do you do? Well, you go to college. That's the next thing you do. And so I went to college because, it's kind of like, why do you get engaged? Well, we've been dating this long. It's just sort of, you just kind of do that. And my really good friends were going to Iowa State.
Mm-hmm.
But I had no idea why I was there. I was good in math, so I thought maybe I'll be an engineer. Well, I went to a couple freshman engineering classes, like, this is not for me. This isn't math, right? This is something else. And so I just went from major to major. I was a PE major for a while. I was a biology major for a while, but not doing well in school. Again, just lacking direction, just going to classes and racking up debt, unfortunately. So between my junior and senior year, I had a religious experience. Mm-hmm. I had been reading some evangelical books, and I saw someone preach the gospel, and I met God, right? So I need to get saved. So this sounds very evangelical, right? I need to be born again. Mm-hmm. And so you got to say the sinner's prayer. So I had this religious conversion, right? Mm-hmm. So I'm no longer drinking. I'm no longer partying. I'm thinking about school. But now with that, I've been saved, and I'm no longer distracted by all the stupidity that college kids do. I had to think about what I wanted to study. And so I couldn't find anything. I really had a hard time. I was communications. I got so tired of school. I just wanted to read my Bible all the time. Mm-hmm. And so I read the Bible so much that I stopped going to class. Mm-hmm. And I didn't withdraw. So I didn't know anything about academics. I didn't know anything about how the system worked. I just quit going. I was that depressed. I just want to stay home and read and evangelize. So then I basically got asked to take some time off from Iowa State. And then when I decided, okay, what I'm going to do is maybe I can be a religious studies major. Maybe I can be a pastor or a missionary, something like that. Mm-hmm. Or at least graduate. If I study religious studies, I know I can at least complete that degree. Mm-hmm. What I do with that, I don't know. Just got to get to the degree. So I went to community college, and I was going to take religious studies. It was a Monday night. It was world religions. Man, I can't wait to go in there. We're going to debate Hinduism. We're going to debate this. I'm ready to argue and debate and have some fascinating conversations. And then the other Tuesday, Thursday classes, one was developmental psych, and the only other one that fit my schedule was philosophy. It was a moral philosophy class, ethics. And I just was not pretty apathetic. Like, yeah, whatever. Wasn't all that crazy about taking philosophy. So the semester starts. I go to the Monday night class. I'm ready to argue. And the professor just shoots me down from the beginning. He said, we don't debate in here. We just really read and appreciate different religions. And I thought, okay, which is fine. But religious like to debate each other. I just didn't understand. I mean, this is okay. I mean, can I ask questions? No, we're just to study. I'm like, so that was kind of a letdown. Then the next day, the philosophy class, I go in there, I sit down, and the professor comes in. He writes on the board, what is the good? And that was it. I just sat there and I just stared at it. What is that? Next question. What is happiness? Like, yeah, what is that? And so why did it save me? Because finally there was something to think about. Finally there was some meaningful conversation to have. And it saved me because philosophy was asking the very same questions that I was asking as a Christian. They were the same questions.
Mm-hmm.
Then after a few months, I realized after keep studying that I could do philosophy. I think this is something that I'm actually incapable of doing.
Mm-hmm.
It's work. It's very hard, but I think I can do this.
Mm-hmm.
So then I went back to Iowa State, changed majors, and finished up philosophy there. And as I was studying there, what do you do with a philosophy degree? Well, then you have to teach.
Mm-hmm.
But it saved me because now it really gave me something to do, something to think about, something that kept my interest. I loved it. Still love it. I love these things. Right? I love the questions that philosophers ask, and you almost become a kid again. Right? So in the sense, philosophers are like the childlike things that Jesus is talking about. Unless you have the faith like a child, well, that's kind of what a real philosopher is kind of like that.
Mm-hmm.
Right? The world isn't boring to them. They wonder, why is there anything, why does anything exist? Just today in our metaphysics class, one student said, how free are we? Because the world tells us how free we are. I said, well, you're not really all that free. He said, what do you mean? I said, well, what in your life has actually been up to you?
Mm-hmm.
How about your DNA? Your parents? Your abilities? Your talents? Because my wife's beautiful, but she had nothing to do with that. Right? I mean, some people are really tall. They had nothing to do with that.
Mm-hmm.
Some people are short. God had nothing to do with that. I wish I had more hair. I had nothing to do with that. And they said, so what do we have? What are we free to do? And so this is one of those moments where I swear the guardian angel's talking into your ear.
Mm-hmm.
I said, well, you're free to either accept that or not.
Mm-hmm.
You can just hear a pin drop. What are you talking about? You're free to accept what God has done or not.
Mm-hmm.
Now here's how dangerous. So the tiger just bees a tiger. God makes the tiger, and what do tigers do? They be tigers. That's why they're never pets. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
What does the tree do? Trees be trees.
Mm-hmm.
Pigs be pigs. But I can choose to be a pig. I can choose to be like an animal.
Ah.
I can choose not to do what God wants me to do. I can choose to live like a pig.
Mm-hmm.
So those are kinds of things that sort of that's why philosophy is so great. That's why it's so fun, because you get at the heart of things.
Mm-hmm.
It forces you to think about these things.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you want to say something.
When you said you were just staying in your room reading the Bible all day, you were obviously interacting with the inspired Word of God, and yet it was not until that philosophy or the way to think was introduced. What do you think was missing from you as you were reading the same scriptures that, well, St. Thomas would have read?
So what you're doing as an evangelical, you don't do systematic theology like you would as a Catholic. So when you are evangelical, and especially when you're in a ministry like these campus ministries, they take you through the scriptures primarily to witness. So you would know, like, no one is righteous before God, right? You must be born again to see the kingdom of heaven. So you'd have these verses that were evangelical verses, and you would put these to memory, and you do some studies. But for whatever reason, I don't ever remember coming across a standard Catholic verse, like when Jesus breathes on the apostles and says, whosoever sins you forgive are forgiven. I don't remember, I think it's Titus, where it says that the church is the bulwark and pillar of the truth. I don't remember these statements. I don't remember going through like First Peter with the Noah's Ark and the waters representing baptism. We just didn't talk about those things. So that's a real eye-opener for evangelicals. Okay. And one of the reasons why I don't think we encounter it, because the Catholics didn't know these verses existed.
Mm-hmm.
Almost every Catholic I met in college had no idea what the Bible said. So you could really twist a Catholic pretty quickly by saying things like, show me in the Bible where the word sacrament's used.
Mm-hmm.
Show me in the Bible where it says I confess my sins to a priest.
Mm-hmm.
Show me where the list of 7 sacraments are. So that kind of question. Now, when of course went to St. Louis, these guys had answers.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
They said, you're doing theology sola scriptura. I'm like, well, yes. He said, where does your scriptura come?
Mm-hmm.
Like, oh, I never thought of that.
Mm-hmm.
Didn't think of that. So that was the first time philosophy saved me.
Mm-hmm.
Is it really, I loved studying it. I love thinking about God, because primarily my whole life has been about, is there a God? I really want to know if there is a God. I tend to be kind of a pessimist.
Mm-hmm.
Is there really anything more than just this world? And so I've always been interested in God. And of course, with Thomas, the reason I fell in love with Thomas Aquinas, I want to know his God. If you take anything away from Thomas Aquinas, his God is, he puts Aslan to shame. He really is the one. He is the one being. He is existent. So I tell this to students too. Does God exist? Depends on what you mean.
Mm-hmm.
The statement God exists is true, but God doesn't exist. He is existence.
Mm-hmm.
Like, what? And so you can just see the students, what are you talking about? Yeah, he is being itself.
Mm-hmm.
What does that mean? Well, God is why there's anything. So I don't put God on the board. God is why the board's there. That's why the reason God is why I'm right. God is responsible for why I'm able to write on this thing right there and teach you. He's responsible for all of this.
Or why we're even able to talk about him at all, or have this podcast even. Yeah.
The
I
whole
remember
thing.
Father Bema, may he rest in peace, in our seminary, he always would say that God is not one of many gods running around the universe. He is the only God, obviously, and he's also the source of all being. Yeah,
He's not one. He's not in the universe.
Mm-hmm.
right.
Mm-mm. He's not a member of a group.
Mm-hmm.
So when becoming Catholic, the one thing I love about being Catholic, now we can start to maybe move into kind of what I'm doing now in the whole philosophy thing, and how St. Thomas and being Catholic, what has changed as a Catholic, and this might surprise some people, being Catholic is what saved me being a philosopher.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm a philosopher and I'm loving philosophy, but the more I'm studying philosophy, the more I'm realizing how limited reason is.
Mm. Mm-hmm.
And I'm realizing how much of a rationalist I am.
Mm-hmm.
I'm coming to terms with myself, thinking I'm using philosophy to see whether I should believe something. And so I believe in the Trinity because I think philosophy can show it's true. I believe in the incarnation of Jesus Christ because I think we can use philosophy as evidence to prove it. And then I read Thomas Aquinas, and he says, you believe in the Trinity on God's authority, period. So that really just struck me. So what is going on here? So when I started reading how Thomas understood faith,
Mm-hmm.
for the first time I saw how faith completes the philosophical journey. And in the evangelical world, I'm always having to, at the time, fight people and argue with them that they need to do philosophy and using Bible, but they didn't have any teeth because just one opinion among many. And then I started reading the church. I couldn't believe it. The church says philosophy is necessary for doing theology.
Mm-hmm.
Right, paragraph 251 of the Catechism says that the church, in order to articulate its doctrine of the Trinity, employs terms of philosophical origin.
Mm-hmm.
And it just dawned on me, well, if a Catholic doesn't know philosophy, they're not going to understand their doctrine.
Mm-hmm.
Who else is like that? Nobody. The church teaches that that sees in philosophy noble pursuit. the church sees in philosophy a way of becoming more human.
Mhm.
Like, wow, so the church's advocation for philosophy says something about what they think we are. The church believes that in philosophy, it's indispensable for understanding your faith, and it's one of the highest human inquiries.
Mhm.
I thought about that quite a bit. What does that tell me? It tells me that what's most about being like God is I have an intellect.
Mhm.
Using my mind is what makes me like God. Not that I have a body, that I have feelings or emotions, that because I have a mind, when I exercise and I understand metaphysics and philosophy, I am being, quote unquote, godlike.
Mm-hmm.
To your point about the intellect, my intellect participates in God's mind. That's how it even does this stuff. I mean, Augustine called it a divine illumination.
Mhm.
And that's where I think if the church gets that right, it's got to be right about its theology. So when the church says that not only is it important to study philosophy, not only is it noble, but it's indispensable for the formation of her priests.
Mhm.
What does that tell us? It tells us that the guardians at the gate, right, the priests who stand in the gap, are trained philosophers,
Mhm.
or they should be.
We
They're
talked about
trained
this
philosophers.
on the last episode. We had the rector of St. Pius X Seminary, Father Jeff Dole, on, and he talked about,
He just came back from Angelicum, I believe, right?
yeah,
Mhm.
he was studying over there, and he said that philosophy is the handmaiden of theology, and this is what we talked a pretty good chunk of the episode about why it's important for seminarians to not only learn how to say mass and exercise and stuff, but also learn philosophy. So,
You need to have an intellectual life,
Mhm.
mm-hmm.
right? And I would say that'll help your soul. It does. So when I um, became Catholic, I really struggled with should I stay a philosopher?
Mhm.
Because we had family at the time. We had 4 kids, still have 4 kids, and we were pretty much stuck in Iowa. Stuck in the sense that we had roots,
Mhm.
and so I was going to leave academia and find a job in Cedar Rapids because I needed a job, and so I was downtown looking at jobs, and I ran into a friend of mine who worked at Xavier High School. She said Xavier's hiring for a theology instructor.
Mhm.
And I said, well, they're not going to hire me. There's just no way I'm going to give my CV. This person's too much of an academic nerd, right? He's going to be too abstract. He can't relate to the students. And I don't know what happened in the interview, but it must have gone fairly well because Tom Keating called me and offered me the job.
Mhm.
And I told Holly, do I take the job? She said, yes. I couldn't even get the question out. Yes, take that job. I said, why is that, honey? She said, 2 reasons. It's almost like she's a philosopher. 2, do you have any job now? Like, no. Okay. So, and second, she said, that's going to lead somewhere.
Mhm.
And being at the high school, it wasn't 3 weeks in the high school, and all the kids already wanted philosophy.
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
They already wanted philosophy. I kind of wish sometimes administrations knew that,
Mhm.
how much the students love to philosophize, love reading Plato, Socrates, Aristotle, Augustine. Right? These are some of the greatest minds ever. And in my second year, this is a real shot in the arm. They have a baccalaureate speaker, and the senior class picks their speaker. Okay, so I didn't think anything of it. I'm sitting in my office, and the priest comes in, Father Vu comes in. He says, do you have a minute? I'm like, hey, who did I offend? Or I probably gave some argument and made somebody upset. Philosophers tend to do that. And he said, you've been asked to be the baccalaureate speaker. And my jaw just hit the ground. Like, they want the philosopher? And so he said, apparently. And that was during my prep time. Okay, so I said, I'll think about it. The next class came in, and it was the seniors. I said, "Is this true?" They said, "Yes, we want philosophy in our baccalaureate. We want to hear arguments." And so, okay, so then when the speech came, I walked up there and I started giving arguments against skepticism. They lost it. They loved it. They said, "See, Mom, this is what we've been studying." Well, it wasn't hard to make the case because the church advocates for it. So once people start and they see it, they start loving it. Okay, so I'm teaching at philosophy at Xavier. Then move forward. I get the job at Divine Word, and I'm teaching students from all over the world. And I keep getting emails from folks saying, "Do you have a podcast?" Like, this is years ago. I don't know what's a podcast. I don't know what that was. This is probably 9-10 years ago. Like, no. Why would I want to do that? I'll just go home and read books. So I didn't think anything of it. Another email. Do you have any videos? Like, no, I don't have any videos. And I finally said, "Why do you guys keep asking me this?" They said, "Well, because you teach us one class, we get really excited, and what else are we supposed to do?" Like, "Oh, so you want to keep going with this?" They said, "Yes." "Okay. Well, I'll think about it. That sounds interesting, and maybe." Because I don't, as my spiritual director always says, be careful who's telling you should do something.
That's very wise.
Yeah, very wise. So 3 years ago, a friend of mine in North Carolina, a former student of mine at SES, he said, "I'm going to create a website for you, and you're going to make those classes. You're going to create these classes." Like, "What class?" He said, it's at this point, it'd been like 8 years since I had him as a student. He said, "That was great. I'd be in those classes. We're studying metaphysics, philosophy of God, the Trinity, and all these wonderful things. And then I graduated. And now what?" It's not the community college. So I've really been thinking about, I said, "Wait, so you're trying to tell me you can't get this anywhere?" He said, "No." And so I started thinking about just what's happening in academia. Philosophers tend to be lost in their own thoughts. And so I said, I've been just in my own head for a long time teaching my classes. What's going on in education? Come to find out, many colleges, Catholic colleges, unfortunately, they are reducing the number of philosophy classes required. You can go to a Catholic college, go through the entire program, not take logic. Can you believe that? Maybe an intro class. So here's the church saying that the church believes that a solid education and formation in good philosophy is necessary to find the truth. Faith and reason are both necessary for finding the truth. That you need philosophy to understand the mysteries of revelation. You need philosophy to understand how to evangelize the world. It's also evident that people have a minimal opportunity to do that. Where can you go? I thought, okay, now there's a need. So maybe I'll do that. So then 2 years ago, we started Read Thomist, which is the website, which is the ministry, the online project, I like to say. So over the last few years, then students have been coming up and asking. So I'll teach, be teaching the diaconate. The diaconate was a big changer for me because here I am teaching. You have to have philosophy. You've got to have theology, and they have 1 day on it. So oftentimes they'd say, we love this, but we want to learn more. Where can we learn it? I said we could come to Divine Word, do that. Of course, that didn't work. So finally I said, I need to do something about this. And that was just at the same time that Matt Graham told me that he's going to create the website for me. And again, I have no idea how this is going to go because I'm a teacher. I cannot do, and maybe this is a bad thing, I can't just do popular level stuff. Mm-hmm. Thomas Aquinas ruins you. So, but I don't want to make it super deep, but I really want to teach. If we're going to do philosophy, we're going to do philosophy. Philosophy is for serious people. And philosophy is so countercultural right now. Mm-hmm. Right? As G.K. Chesterton said, right, the saint for the time is the one who contradicts the time the most. Well, our time is characterized by irrationality and anti-intellectual. So who's the saint for the time? The most intellectual, the heaviest philosopher. So I decided that we'll make this philosophy channel Thomistic. We're going to make it Thomistic. Why Thomas? Why Thomas? Well, because Thomas provides insight into the truth. He's one of the greatest philosophers of all time, whether you're Catholic or not. He's a genius. He's prolific. He's original, one of the most original. He's most systematic. He's comprehensive. His method is wonderful, his dialectical method, where he raises objections and then responds with his own reply and then responds to the objections. His arguments for God are still valid and sound. His insight into the nature of the virtues, supernatural, grace, nature, his doctrines of the Trinity, his conceptions of love. It's just amazing, original, deep. His answer to pantheism, his doctrine of analogy, his metaphysics. Non-Catholics love him. So he's insightful. He's comprehensive. He's biblical. He's devout. He as big as his brain is, his heart is bigger. He really loves God. And you know what? He is successful. You can actually find truth with him. So we named it the Reed Thomist Philosophy website. Okay, I'm thinking, is this going to go anywhere? So we start off Introduction to Philosophy. We got a good number of students. So I just decided this year we would just build the channel. That's all we're going to do. We're going to create content. And so I thought, I'm going to teach stuff that I love. I want to teach topics that you can't find anywhere else. I don't want to be an online blogger. I don't want to be a pop person. I don't want to be someone who just has comments and everything in the media. I wanted this to be a way to actually learn philosophy and theology. And so I thought, what do I do well? Not a whole lot, but I think I do an okay job of teaching. So what does that mean? Well, I'm going to try to reproduce for folks what they would get if I was their professor live. So I record an hour to 2 hour of lectures for every week. And so you can just watch me lecture on the analogy of being, on Plato's theory of forms, Descartes' mind-body problem, the skepticism of David Hume, the divine processions in the Trinity, the problem of the one and the many in metaphysics, how God can be simple and timeless, and all these things. So I do that, and then after participants watch it, then what can we do? We'll do a Zoom class. And so I set up the Zoom, and so that's where the live action is. And so they have watched the pre-recorded lecture, and then they get to talk to me face to face for 2 hours. And I can't believe, but it's growing. Now it's slow and steady because I'm never going to give up my teaching job. What I have seen so often is that when folks do well online, they quit their teaching jobs over and over. And I see it affect their teaching. You've got to have your foot in the classroom. So the classes we have now, we just got done with our first year. And I went online looking, is anyone else doing something like this? And I can't find it. I mean, there are classes. You can go to a popular website and they'll have, I couldn't believe this. I saw one website. It's called like a Thomistic, not the Thomistic Institute of Dominican States, but it's a kind of a Catholic claiming to be Thomistic, and they're talking about God's eternity. The lecture was 20 minutes.
That's not even a warm-up.
You can't even define your terms yet. So this is a serious thing, and so I looked all over, and no one's doing this, and I come to find out why. It's a lot of work, because not only are there classes, I give probably 10 pages of a handout just for the recorded lecture. It's at 10, and there's several handouts, and then I give you another handout for the Zoom meeting. So there's all these notes and handouts and charts, because I'm insane. Why? Because of what philosophy has done for me, how it has saved me, what it has done in other people's lives. I want people to actually learn what the church is teaching. When the church says that philosophy is indispensable, when it says that philosophy is noble, when philosophy is one of the two wings that we fly for the contemplation of truth, it doesn't mean a 20-minute discussion on eternity. It's talking about roll up your sleeves, and it's time to get to work, and we're going to dive into speculative, theoretical, abstract thinking. That's what the church is saying. That's what the church advocates. And so that's what we're going to do, and that's what we've been doing. So we've got the introduction to philosophies on there. We have a class on metaphysics. We have a class on philosophy of God. I just finished the Trinity. We have angels next. Angels is next. We have a class on moral theology, and then we're going to finish off the year with Christology, Thomas's Christology. Next year, it's going to be David Hume and Kant. We're going to look at natural theology, arguments and proofs for the existence and nature of God. We're going to do human nature, and we're going to do epistemology.
Wow. Great.
Yeah, so we're crazy.
Yeah, roll up your sleeves, kids.
Roll up your sleeve, kids. It's time to get to work. But you're not alone.
Yeah.
Because oftentimes when people try to do philosophy on their own, they either, on the one hand, they start to learn things they've got no one to talk to.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, no one to talk to. No
Ooh.
place to really bounce ideas. Yeah, you want to say something,
Yeah, I
Father?
want to make a connection. This is because I've got Clark's. I've had the Summa. First of all, the Summa Theologiae is Thomas's greatest work, and I've got like Clark's One and the Many on my shelf, and I remember learning some of that stuff. And when I try to read those on my own, I'm like, okay, this is great. I can only go so far. I feel
right.
until I really ask the Holy Spirit, the intercession of the saints, and other humans, in the same way that when you were just reading the Bible on your own, in your room alone, it wasn't until you found community as well that really made everything click. And
Yeah, and there are friendships being formed in these classes.
mm-hmm.
There's no doubt about that. I want to say something about the studying on your own. So it was yesterday. I was having a pretty rough day. I thought, does anybody care about this? I have my moments where everyone just wants things so quick. Is this even worth it? I get a long email from someone who's thanking me because of the classes. He said, this is exactly what I've been looking for. I'm like, okay, that was really a shot in the arm. Mm-hmm. And a former student of mine came in into my office. He said, to get some knowledge is what he said. I'm here to get some knowledge. That was cute. He said, he graduated 2 years ago. He said, Dr. Reed, I'm dying. Your wife said, I'm dying. I studied philosophy. I'm starting to lose it, right? I'm starting to forget. Help me. What can I do? And so I showed him Reed Thomas. He said, you actually have classes? I mean, I can go in, and I said, yes, you can go. You can have access to these. Sign up. And he said, thank you. So for me, it's more like I have received much.
Mm-hmm.
I have been educated by some fantastic teachers. It's just now time for me to pass that on.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I'm thinking. Yeah. So, so there's Read Thomism, and it's emphasis on Thomas Aquinas. We also have a radio broadcast. So we have there's a Read Thomas YouTube channel, and I have been asked to do some radio shows through KMMK, I think it is, in Cedar Rapids, the Maze radio station out of Cedar Rapids.
Yeah, Tony and Sue May, yeah.
Yep. And so I just got done recording episode 12 where I go over syllogism. So here's a radio show where I'm covering syllogisms and how'd that happen. So I'm making the case in the first three episodes that what I'm saying to you, you've got to know philosophy. Like, what's wrong with you people, right? We got to know philosophy. We need to be serious thinkers. We need to be serious people. That's what the church needs, is serious thinkers. And then I relate a story. This is, it had been a few weeks before this episode. So I was at a local college, and I'm checking out Augustine on the Trinity, some light reading. Okay. And I don't know how, we're walking, I'm checking out the book. And again, I don't teach at this school. And the young man working behind the counter, he said, "Oh, the Trinity, what are you working on?" I said, "Well, there's a logical objection to the Trinity. I'm going to read Augustine, how he solves that." He said, "Logic? What's that?" I said, "Oh, well, logic is the study or the science of arguments." And you could just see life was starting to come into his eyes. He said, "So there, you can study arguments." Oh, yeah, there's a valid arguments. There's an objective science to inference, how you reason to conclusions. You study the mistakes that you can make. You learn the basics of reasoning. And so you learn to think for yourself. But I said to this young man, thinking for yourself doesn't mean you're thinking what you want to think.
Yeah.
Logic makes you think things and helps you to find the truth whether you like it or not. That's an educated person believes something because they must, not because they want to. And logic does that, because logic takes out all prejudice, all bias, all superstition, because either the premises are true or they're not, and they entail their conclusion, or they don't. Mm-hmm. It cuts through all the noise. And then he said to me something that just really made me sad. He said, "Oh, where can I study that?" I said, "Well, I'm sure they've got something here at the university." No, they don't. And so I'm talking about this at the radio show. So here I'm making my own argument. Here's my argument. If we really are educating people, if we're really educating them, then aren't we teaching them the basics of reasoning? But we're not teaching the basics of reasoning. Then who are we educating? If you don't know how to draw a conclusion from a premise, how in the world can you be educated? And as these words are coming out of my mouth, I said, "Oh, there's my next radio shows." So I said, "I guess I'm going to be talking about, ready folks, you're going to learn some logic on a radio program." So I just finished up that, and some of the things we were talking about earlier about Jesus making arguments, we go through that. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Logic preaches, philosophy preaches. So we're doing that, and then over Christmas break, I'm going to create Read Rants, is the other channel, where there's a lot of nonsense out there. And so I'm a choleric, so I get fired up. So we're going to do some ranting on some stuff that needs some good ranting. There's one evangelical scholar right now. Now, this is a laundry list of errors. They teach nominalism, so there are no essences. They teach that Jesus has one will, so he's a monothelite. He teaches he's a neo-Apollinarian, which means Jesus does not have a human soul. And God is tri-personal. There are three individual persons in the Godhead. Wow.
Okay, when you said you were going to start ranting,
There's a rant coming right there.
Well, I thought maybe you were just gonna go light and like rant about why daylight savings time still is a thing, but no, you're gonna rant about the triune God and how Christ was not a monotheolite. That's great.
Yes, yes. We got some good rants.
Yeah.
So that'll be fun. That'll be
Yeah,
fun.
as this episode is kind of an ad, we're not receiving any money. I'm currently on the tail end of the Trinity class from Reed Thomist, and that's how I first thought to ask you on. And I forgot one thing when I started taking this class that, oh yeah, I'm a pastor. And it was difficult to keep up. I've still got a little work to do. Anyway, my question is, if I or another person wanted to learn just take the intro to philosophy class, that already technically occurred, but is that still on the website for anyone to just go watch and take the handouts?
Absolutely. I've decided, because first year's trial and error.
Yeah.
I think I need to make classes more just viewer friendly.
Mm-hmm.
So over break, I'm going to create a 5-week just logic class.
Mm-hmm.
There won't be any Zooms. You can watch them at your own pace, and there will be homework for you.
Mm-hmm.
So that'd be so that's sort of you don't have, so that's just there, and you can take that whenever. Any classes that have already been they've already been done, right? You have access to those. And in the future, I'm going to do less Zooms, but longer.
Mm-hmm.
So, but yeah, and that's the nice thing about the Zooms. Everything is recorded. So whether you actually are in the classroom or not, you get to watch the whole thing at your own pace. Everything is recorded. And some people like that. They like to come back later and watch the class, like the class interaction. And so doing 5 weeks of Zoom, it's a lot. Now it's every other week, but people are busy. So I think we're gonna try with the angel class, do 3 this time. So yeah, you can start the intro class today. You can just start the metaphysics class today. And if you have suggestions, like some students they wanted me to do a Catholic apologetics class, so we'll be doing that in the summer. We may do like even book studies. Like I'm thinking about doing Dante's Inferno over the summer. So we're just growing and growing and growing. Does that answer your question?
Yes, it does. Yes. Yeah. So if
you
myself
get started today, yep.
wanted to look at any of these classes that you've talked about, and the website is readthomas.com, and I'll be putting that in the description for you to click and check around there. All the classes are pretty much the same price. Is that correct?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I think it was $250.
Something like that, yeah. And that's and you just have it then.
Yeah.
You just have it.
And it's great. I mean, it's grueling graduate level work. So you don't sign up and pay.
Well, I'm also creating different levels.
Oh, okay.
So the logic will be, and that's another thing that I've realized is that students can sign up for something. Wait a minute, this is really hard. So there's going to be beginner, moderate, and advanced. Mm-hmm. The logic is beginner. Mm-hmm. The intro is beginner. Mm-hmm. Human nature will be moderate level. Mm-hmm. Right? Moral philosophy will be moderate. The Trinity is advanced. Mm-hmm. And there's no other way to do the Trinity than advanced. There is just no other way. So that's another change that we're making. And if you want to get a catalog for all that stuff, you can just email me at readthomas@gmail.com, and I can send you a catalog for what's coming up and more course descriptions and things like that. Because you're right, it is. I tend to go deep, and I have a hard time not doing that.
Don't apologize for that. That's been
okay.
Yeah, when I'm saying Mass, actually, because of the Trinity class, I've been reading the prayers and the prefaces and different things, and thinking, who am I talking to right now? Like, am I addressing the Father or the Son, and then seeing the prayers come around together, and yeah, it's made everything glow, and it's really cool.
Well, another thing too because this is something I've learned about philosophy as well. It's hard. Mm-hmm. So even if you're taking a hard philosophy class, you as the learner, you make it your own how you want to understand it.
Mm-hmm.
So when you study, say, and this happens all the time, people will take a deep metaphysics class, and like we have Sister Maritha in our class at Divine Word. She doesn't have much of a philosophy background, but she just wanted to take metaphysics. She is just, but her life has changed just with talking about how evil isn't a thing.
Mm-hmm.
And she's been really moved by, metaphysically speaking, there's no such thing as a human best. You don't have a best. You can't do your best. See, already, yeah, people look at that. What do you mean I can't do my best? You can't do your best. It doesn't exist. If you do your best, you're God. God can do the best. You can't do the best. Why? Because no matter what you do, could it be better? Now, grace changes everything.
Mm-hmm.
Grace changes everything. But that's not you anymore.
Right.
So it just again, those things she's just saying, yeah, I can't. So that she said, just the nature of act and potency. If you take a philosophy class, act and potency. What's act and potency? It explains how things change. So you can't be whatever you want to be. You can only become actual what you have the potential to be. And she said, my whole life I've been told I can do whatever I want, and that has not made me happy. She said, God created me to be a certain way, and I'm limited, and so I have to deal with the potencies that I have.
Mm-hmm.
I said, exactly. I said, I am a C student in art. That's what I am. I have the potency to be a C student in art.
Hmm.
And why is that a good thing? Because if we give out A's to everybody, what are we telling them? They have the potential and they're actualizing me excellent. It's not excellent. If they told me I got an A in art, I have the false assumption that I'm actually an A student in art. I'm not an actual A student in art because I'm not a potential A student. I'm a potential C student. And people, if you want to debate me, I'll show you my art work when I was in school. But here's what's also great. I said, but we were all A students when it comes to love.
Hmm.
We're all A students when it comes to faith.
Yeah.
So we may not have St. Thomas's mind. We may not have the potential to be him. But we can all be people of love. That we all have.
Mm-hmm.
And so again, you become the philosopher that you want to be. You become the kind of philosopher that you have the potential to be. And that's a good thing. And so, yeah, the class may be difficult, but everyone should think about the Trinity.
Mm-hmm.
Everyone should think about Christology. Everyone should think about angels.
Mm-hmm.
And so like this one, he's a businessman. He's in one of the classes and he says, you're ruining me. Like, what are you talking about? He said, I've been thinking about the divine processions all week. Because I can't stop thinking about there really is a procession in God, that there is a word proceeding in God and it's the same thing as God. All week he's been thinking that.
And what I love is when we just rattle off the creed every Sunday, like the sun proceeds.
You'll never be the same. It's right. You never see it the same.
What does that mean? Like, it all means something, and it's
deep.
all deep, very deep. Yeah.
Here's another thing too. Is God the Father masculine?
I'd say no.
No. Is it feminine?
No.
No. So then what is it? I don't know. I just know that he's called Father because he issues his Son. But the scripture does say that the Son is in the womb of the Father. So somehow the God's fatherhood transcends the masculine feminine. There's a womb, which is feminine, in the bosom of the Father. Mm-hmm. These are kind of things you start contemplating, thinking about. He's a father that in ways I don't understand.
Mm-hmm.
He is.
And then this leads to Christology, right? That's what philosophy does. Philosophy helps develop, nourish, and grow your speculative intellect. Mm-hmm. Have you ever speculated on what it means for a divine person to have human flesh?
Mhm.
Whose body is that? Whose human body is that? This is God's body. This is God's blood. So what happens if you eat a divine being? What happens when you drink his blood?
Mhm.
You have life.
Oh.
It's not just regular flesh. No, it's not less than human flesh. But because it belongs to the second person of the Trinity.
Yeah.
Another thing, when the second person of the Trinity's body walks into the water, does the baptism of water change him? He changes the water.
Mm-hmm.
What?
Mhm.
When Jesus' human body shows up to a wedding,
Mhm.
it's now a sacrament.
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
Because you literally have God walking around in the flesh.
Yeah.
And then what happens when you kill him?
Uh-oh.
Does he have to go into the dead? Yeah, when you die, you go to the dead. Now, what happens when the Son of Man, what happens when God, who is dead, goes to where the dead are? He undoes the whole thing.
Mhm. Mhm.
There's a great prayer in the Eastern Orthodox Church on the funeral of Jesus. It's on Sunday mornings,
Wow.
where the prayer is chanted from the perspective of hell itself,
Mm.
and hell is lamenting that they killed the Lord, because they didn't realize that when you kill the Son of God, you've just killed yourself, because life is coming in, and they can't stop him from coming in because they have to receive the dead. And so he's lamenting.
Mm.
By killing him, we just sealed our own fate, because life is now coming into the dead. The one whom you can't kill, because he's not going to stay there. He's bringing people, he's bringing the captives with that. It's a great prayer. That's all speculative theology. Now, in order to do that, you've got to do some serious philosophy. It is going to be abstract. It is going to be jargony. But you got to, why? Because it's scientific. So I've kind of given you some of the fun stuff in it, but you've got to do the work.
Mm-hmm.
As you would attest to, Father, right? You got to do the work.
Man.
Wow. Well,
Do you have any questions or comments, or is anything else you want to hear from me? Or just so to repeat, my students dragged me kicking and screaming. I'm even on Facebook. I just hate it so much.
No, this is absolutely wonderful. So I would encourage our listeners also to, I guess we talked about our last episode, talking about the importance of. So this really builds very well in our last episode, where we just talked about seminary formation and how philosophy is an integral part of that. But how much is take this much more deeper?
Because
Yeah.
all priests love philosophy, right? They love it.
they come to love it. Seminarians usually don't, but priests.
Seminarians don't. I remember one time, why do I have to do this? What's this got to do with me running a parish? I'm like, oh man.
I will say,
it's not about running a parish.
Cringe a little bit when you talked about studying Kant and Hume, because when I first joined seminary, of course, I was all eager to learn about God, and then my first philosophy class as a seminarian was modern philosophy. So,
oh boy,
which is like the worst place to start in the cycle of philosophy. So we're just talking about, it's like the skepticism.
Very depressing.
Yes, it was super depressing, and I'm like, what did I get myself into? But then we cycled around to ancient and medieval, and so I kind of actually ended my undergrad of seminary with the study of Thomas Aquinas, and then it's like, oh, so this is
well, and you see how Thomas is even a giant amongst all of them.
Oh yeah.
That's a nice thing too about, as a Catholic, you go to any university and you go to any philosophy department and you ask them who are the top 5 philosophers of all time. There isn't a Protestant on that list. There are 2 Catholics on that list.
Mm-hmm.
Augustine and Aquinas.
Mm-hmm.
And then Plato, Socrates, and Aristotle.
Or Kant. Usually Kant would be on there. Kant's great. Hegel could be on there. That changes. But there's a book by Pelikan. What's Pelikan's first name? Yaroslav Pelikan. It's called The Riddle of Roman Catholicism. And he says that a lot of people say the Catholic Church has superstition, right? We got our beads and our statues and all of our crossings, what people might think is superstitious. But he said no one in all the Protestant denominations, no one in all the secular philosophies has anything like Thomism. Thomas is a monster intellect. And there's nothing, so are there any, let's talk about modern philosophy for a second. Are there any, to be a Cartesian is to be a follower of Descartes. Where are the Cartesians? Where are the Kantians? Where's Spinoza? Where's Leibniz? We are 700 years after Thomas, and we are filled with Thomists. There are Anglican Thomists. There are Baptist Thomists. There are Eastern Orthodox Thomists. There are atheist Thomists, like Robert Pasnow, and they're Catholic Thomists. Because what people don't realize, too, and this is what you get at Read Thomism, is that there's something called the Thomistic tradition. So not only do you have Thomas writing in the 1200s and 13th century, you've got commentaries. You've got Cajetan, Robert Bullard, Jean-Baptiste Jaunet. You've got Silvestri Ferrari. You've got these, and John of St. Thomas. Some of the greatest mystics, they're all Thomists. The Carmelites, they're all Thomists. And so where does this all end? At the end of the day, to be Thomistic, to be philosophical, we're going to become a mystic.
I might just add there, because you mentioned earlier about Thomas, of course, his massive intellect we talked about, and you mentioned earlier in the episode about, like, he wasn't only a giant intellect, but he had heart. He was like, he loved God. And so
he did love God.
So maybe here at the closing, I just might mention that was one of my favorite stories about St. Thomas Aquinas. Of course, there's the story of him laying in prayer, or being there in prayer before the Blessed Sacrament, and there was the voice where God said, what you've written well of me, what would you have me give you? And he said, nothing but you, Lord, nothing but you. And there's stories that people would find him just praying. There's a story even, I think, of him like kneeling right before the tabernacle and him just resting his head on the tabernacle. He just so desired he just desired the Lord and nothing else.
It was the feast day of St. Nicholas in 1273. And the person that recalls that for us is Reginald, his assistant. You have written well of me, Thomas. What will you have as your reward? Non TC de nomine. Nothing but you, Lord. And God showed him a little bit of heaven. And Father, he never wrote again. He said, everything I've written is as straw. Now, he didn't say dung.
Right.
It is straw compared to what he see, but we love the straw. You can do a lot of work with straw. And then a few months later in March, he passed away. But he never wrote again. So isn't it fitting that the Summa is unfinished?
Yeah.
He didn't finish. That's right.
So I would like to congratulate you, Dr. Reed, on, well, first of all, infecting the world with Thomistic thinking and continuing to educate and sharing what you have received so freely. I'd also like to congratulate you on, this is now the longest episode in season 1 or 2.
Of To Be a Christic Revival, yes.
Listeners, if you're still with us, good for you. You can find
you get a sticker, right? Do you have stickers you can send out?
Yes, we could get stickers.
Contact us. We'll send you a
merch
sticker if you made it to
eventually.
the end and want a sticker. Yes.
But you can, like I said, in the description, I'll put the website and some of the book recommendations and just maybe some of the authors.
Yeah, just reach out to me at the worst case scenario. Just reach out to me. That's right.
Yeah, and Dr. Reed is hungry for your for your studies. He wants to give his
I
knowledge.
want you to grow. Yes, I love it when students grow.
And he is right here in our own Archdiocese of Dubuque, which is why we wanted to bring him on. Like this
True.
is happening right here in the Archdiocese of Dubuque. So, which is
That's
what
true.
we're highlighting in this season.
Thank you.
Thank you so
you very
much. Everyone, go look up St. Thomas Aquinas, and I will see you in the Eucharist.
Is that it?